Color Before the Sun by Coheed and Cambria, yet another album of theirs that's going to turn some heads. 2 albums ago, it was Year of the Black Rainbow, which was a prequel, a precursor to the Amory Wars saga, which turned some heads considering everything before that had kind of been going in a straightforward linear fashion, and then we kind of got thrust all the way to the back, sort of like a link to the past. And then with the last album, it was actually a double album split, the Afterman duo of albums. It was done right around the same time that Stone Sour and Five Finger Death Punch were doing things quite similarly. And that was kind of, it was almost like notes from the Amory Wars saga, you know, different characters that really were a part of this as opposed to really giving the story, it gave the story a lot more depth by introducing a lot more characters and a lot more sort of subplot. It really expanded the universe. But then we have this album that has nothing to do with it. Yeah, that whole entire intro was pretty useless, considering this has jack and shit to do with the Amory Wars. This is completely and totally independent. This is the band releasing an album that has nothing to do with the storyline, the epic world that has consumed their career. And this is something that probably is a long time coming for the band, considering this group has so many great tools and they're great storytellers. It almost makes you wonder if the Amory Wars was all that they could do. And whenever people heard You Got Spirit Kid, which is the first single off of this disc, those fears were actually somewhat confirmed by a lot of individuals, considering this song had some pep, it had some pomp, but it was really not a track that really illuminated and set the world on fire like some of the other tracks that this band has been able to produce thus far in their career that is now within its second decade. So, in fact, the song itself actually sounded a bit typical for the time. It definitely felt like this group, which is typically ingrained in what would be considered by myself, and have been saying this for years, progressive alternative. It was one that felt like it was leaning a little bit more toward a conventional pop or even a pop-punk direction in some latitudes, which boggled the mind and felt a bit odd to even think. But now we have the whole disc, and there's a couple things that need to be stated about this. And the first part of it is that if you are concerned that the boys in Coheed and Cambria are unable to write music that's outside of the Amory Wars, they can do it. It just sounds a lot like some of these tracks could easily be a part of the saga. It sounds like some of these tracks are really just detached from the characters of the saga, but easily could be dialogue or sort of something that ties back to some of them. And we'll get to a couple of choice examples here in just a moment. Whenever Island starts off on this disc, and really whenever you get into Island and Eraser, you do get some pep, you do get some step, and you do get that Coheed and Cambria sound. But once again, similar to You Got Spirit Kid, these are a pair of tracks that have that bit of edge, but also really teeter the line toward more traditional alternative pathways instead of really sticking to the whole progressive alternative idea that has been really the spotlight of their career. Now, this isn't the band making a full-fledged turn. This isn't, you know, a minute twist in the highway similar to what Tame Impala did earlier this year by going from psych rock to psych pop. This is instead just a different vein of songwriting, and something that this band has really tweaked and experimented with before on some of the songs off their previous albums, Year of the Black Rainbow especially. Very good tracks, great openers, and then you get the colors, which starts to actually highlight a trend that you're going to be seeing on this record throughout the course of it, and it's sort of this alternating pattern between higher energy songs and ones that are almost like cool down tracks, either that or ones that have a little bit more heart. So really you can sort of separate this album in 2 separate ways. The first way are songs that are laced with energy, and the second way are songs that are laced with a little bit more emotion or a little bit more heart, all depending on how you want to get into it. Colors really identifies this idea by really slowing things down, toning it down, pacing things a little bit more, allowing the atmosphere to really be what's awash in a listener's ear. And it's one that actually presents itself as an early highlight on this disc. Here to Mars was actually the second single that was released off of this album, and this is where the idea that perhaps this could be a part of the Amory Wars saga really comes into play, even though that's not the design. It's a track that you could easily see maybe presented within this as a sort of ballad from one character to the next within this whole cycle. And really the themology of space and everything that is sort of laced within the metaphor that is presented throughout the lyrics of this track is one of the major reasons why that picture sort of gets painted inside of your head, that you could almost see in some sort of saga saying the words that are on this track and have it really be kind of an almost romantic inclination that's really behind it, a romantic motivation that's behind it. Stronger track than You Got Spirit Kid. It has a little bit more of a uniquity to it, but it also still maintains similar tone as You Got Spirit Kid, as far as it's definitely something I could imagine on an alternative station along with tracks from bands such as Fantagram. So it's certainly this is a band that is embracing the progressive side of their sound on this album in light touches, with light brushstrokes, and it is a nice accent, but at the same time, for diehards, this is going to almost seem a bit radical, and it will probably be enjoyable for many folks, considering it will showcase that Coheed does have the ability to open up their overall songwriting ability a little bit more on this disc. Ghost really kind of does the whole flip-flop effect whenever we were talking about heart and emotion, or energy and emotion, or energy and heart, considering Colors has the emotion, and then Here to Mars is a little bit more energetic in spite of its emotional lyricism. Ghost is a little bit more of an emotional song, whereas Atlas goes into something that has a lot more energy, and this was something that was teased by Claudio earlier this summer in an acoustic version. And that sounds just as really epic as this full-scale version does. And it also shows, with this being over 6 minutes, that the longer that these songs get, actually, the more that Coheed's ability as songwriters seems to just expand. They're very good at making single-style songs that are within the 3 to 4 minute mark, or really even cresting up to the 5 minute mark, but whenever it gets even deeper and they're able to kind of add a little bit more and let the space dictate where this song goes, they have great ability. And then you get into Young Love, which transitions back into that emotion or heart side, and this is another track that feels like it could be Amory Wars bound. It has just a great tone to it, but this is also a great track that I could see couples using for one another just independently. It has a really great sound by it, and it almost sounds like it is a bit... It's like an individual saying this to a parent or a mentor or somebody who perhaps was disapproving of some of their choices, but this individual that's singing this track is defending it with the idea of young love being blinded by amore, so to speak. And then going into You Got Spirit Kid, which we know about, the audience and Peace to the Mountain. I love the audience. This is a great track. This is one that has a little bit more fuzz to it, a little bit more crust to it. It has a bit more of an aggressive edge. This is where Coheed almost goes a little bit metal right there in the beginning portions of this track, only to expand it into a little bit more of a progressive edge. This is one where that progression, that brush stroke that we talk about, really showcases itself a little bit more. And Peace to the Mountain is a pretty apt finale. This is one that is a little bit more atmospheric and expansive. It has a little bit more tone to it that is a bit open, but at the same time also alternates between a harder segment and lighter strokes, with the lighter strokes really being the one that sort of overcompensates in the end. Overall, this album has a lot of great things to offer. It really does. It's one that does not waste the opportunity to expand things a little bit, but at the root of everything is that something just feels missing. And the funny part about it is that this presence of the Amory Wars, this presence of this large-scale epic storyline, really is what feels like is missing, even though at times it really feels like it's present. And that's really a nitpicky thing to speak about. It's really a nitpicky problem to have with it, but this is an album that just feels sort of average without having something to tie it all together. It has great tone to it, and its alternating patterns between songs with emotion and songs with energy really does it justice whenever it comes to the flow. You don't necessarily ever feel like you're completely tripped up, but you're just off-balanced enough that it's almost as though Coheed's trying to display their diversity as songwriters, and it for the most part works, but at times can get a little bit it can just get to be a little bit much. You almost want to see a little bit more spacing, maybe 2 tracks between it. You feel like you're getting cooled down just as quickly as you're getting amped back up, which is a bit disjointed, even though the tracks that cool you down usually end up being highlights. It's kind of a weird phenomenon, but it's sometimes the unexplainable that you have to try to explain in this profession, and that ain't easy to do. This is an album that is kind of a conundrum. It is a strange bird, but still one that does possess a lot of Coheed charm, so it's hard not to deliver a really a good score to it, such as an 80 out of 100. 4 stars out of 5, I guess, would be the best way to look at it, because it does have solid material. It's just one that's going to feel inherently very different, quite different to the average Coheed and Cambria fan, and even to the seasoned vets, it's going to be even more of a change of pace, which may backfire, but I think that most Coheed fans will be accepting to this. But let's find out. What did you think about this album by Coheed and Cambria? I want to know, so let me know in the comments below. Yeah, that's the best I could do. That is the best I could do. I'm tired. It's been a long, hellish week. Weeks, months. It's been a long year. Let me know what you think about this album. I'll talk to you later.